Welcome to the Village Green, NBTV show on the environment in our city. I'm Nancy Gardner, your host, and I'm probably in silhouette, which just has nothing to do with Ed, my wonderful camera person, but because I asked him to shoot this way, it's one of those great days when there's hardly a horizon. There are no boats in the water. All you see is this beautiful landscape. You've got arch rock and ladder rock, and it just looks so tranquil. So that's why we're shooting this one shot with me in basic silhouette. So we're going to move out of this shot, though, and you'll see me later. One thing, this show, we had a couple people cancel at the last minute. There's going to be a little bit more of me than there usually is. So I hope you can put up with that. Calling this segment Requiem for a Beach. We're at Little Corona, and it's got quite a history, and most of it's probably unintended consequences. But I want to take you back. Let's go back to the 50s, say. And you would find a much larger beach. There was no water on the beach. You can see a big pond here. There was no dam. So the beach extended back another 25, 50 yards. There was a volleyball court there. The lifeguard tower, which is now right up against the bluff, was past me. Right about where I'm standing here about to get wet from the waves, this is where the lifeguard tower would have been. So obviously the sand was quite a bit higher. If you look towards those rocks, there were still some rocks, but most of them were fairly well covered, so you could have beach towels and things down at that end as well. So there was so much more sand. Beautiful beach. It's where I grew up, basically, on this beach. So sometime in the early 70s, the city built the dam. Nobody knows why now. Maybe it was because they were afraid that the storm water was eroding the bluffs, because that's all that came down. It was a dry canyon, it was cactus and sage, until there were storms, and then of course the storm water would come down. All of a sudden we began to notice a difference. It seemed like just gradually the beach was getting smaller. And I remember my father talking to the city and getting no place. And finally, in the 80s, our Surfrider chapter got the city to really look at the issue. And Craig Everts did a study, and he found out that this is its own little system. Whereas our other beaches, particularly those on the peninsula, have historically gotten their sand from the San Gabriel and Santa Ana rivers, this gets its sand from Buck Gully. It's its own little system, and as long as we didn't mess with it, it worked out just great. Well, of course, all of a sudden the dam is backing up all the sand, so we're not getting the sand to the beach. Then something else happened, and that was, of course, the development of Newport Coast. And I can remember us writing a letter to the city asking them to talk in the EIR to make sure it was a discussion of runoff. The only thing the city had to say on the EIR for Newport Coast was, be sure you make your streets wide enough for our fire trucks. We were not an enlightened city at that point. So all of a sudden we not only have the sand being trapped back there, but we're starting to see water. And now we have water all the time. It's a regular stream. So what can we do about this? Well, Coastkeeper came up with a great idea. We'll go up to Fifth Avenue and we'll take the water and pipe it to Pelican Hills Golf Course. They get free water, we get the water off the beach. Yay, problem solved. Well, the Department of Fish and Wildlife said, no, you now have riparian habitat which you must maintain, so water must come down the canyon. Okay, well what if we put it down the canyon and then piped it here? Unfortunately, at that time particularly, it was before they redid the pump station. They couldn't handle the capacity. So the problem continued. And I kept nagging, and staff came up with then a wonderful solution, which we talked about on the program, to put a filtration system right past the dam so that the water would come over, percolate through the sand, come out clean, but would be off the beach. Great idea. Unfortunately, the Coastal Commission staff didn't like it. One of their arguments against it was that we would take away this lovely water here that the seagulls use. Now, these are the seagulls that used to fly to the dump, so I think they could have moved 10 feet inland to get the water, but no. So I finally thought, well, if even the Coastal Commission won't help us save this beach, maybe we just have to write it off. I don't know. But that's why I call this Requiem for a beach. So far we've come up with no solution, and with sea level rise, well, maybe we'll create a new estuary, who knows. So this water is essentially on the beach all the time. It's got a couple of problems. One is kids love it. Obviously, I mean, it's pretty warm, it's flat compared to the ocean, which has waves and it's cold. So you get a lot of little kids wading in here, and the water is a lot of times not very clean because it's coming down through a lot of fertilizers and other things. So that's one issue. The second issue is the tide pools that over the eons, the vegetation and the marine life adapted to salt water with occasional spurts of fresh water. Now they have, for the last 4 or 5 decades, they have 24-hour fresh water. They don't evolve that fast. So it's been very damaging. If you look at those tide pools compared to what they were in the 50s, they're certainly not flourishing. And it's not all because of predation by humans. Part of it's just that they are weaker than they were because of this change of their environment. I'm down here at China Cove, and this is the Kirkhoff Marine Laboratory, and it's owned by CalTech. And there was a period where this did all sorts of wonderful science. It was used as labs for students and everything. And then CalTech sort of pulled back from it. It's been sitting essentially empty for quite a period. And I know a few years ago, UCI became very interested and had a proposal that they would partner with CalTech and raise the funds to do what's necessary to bring it up to snuff. It needs seismic retrofits and just neglect in general to bring it up. But they thought that their students and the CalTech students could do it and would be a magnet for science. It's very unique in that it has an intake from the harbor. And that sort of thing is so hard to get permitted today. Unfortunately, although CalTech has shown interest, it hasn't progressed very much, and what seems to be happening is the general aura of neglect. There was a dock, and as I paddled around, every week I'd see it a little bit more decrepit, and it was crumpling, and finally it's just sunk into the water and they removed it. The concern is that they'll just take so long to do it that pretty soon it won't even be worthwhile to retrofit this. And that would be such a shame. I mean, granted, they'll make money off of it. I mean, I'm sure there are all sorts of developers who'd love to buy that piece of property and put in a bunch of very high-end condos or something. But we are in an era when the ocean is experiencing so many hazards. Of course, everybody's heard of the big plastic gyre, but ocean acidification is a huge issue as well, and the climate change with warming temperatures, moving and changing ecosystems. And this particular institute could be doing cutting-edge work, could be working with Scripps and the Monterey Bay Aquarium and others, and trying to find answers to how we adapt our oceans to what's coming. And yet, so far, as I say, it's been seems like a lot of foot dragging. So I'm hoping that, hey, any of you out there that are CalTech alumni or something, you might send an email and say, hey, let's get going with the Kerckhoff, because I know UCI would be delighted to participate, and I'm sure a lot of people would be able to contribute because it's such a wonderful possibility, the potential there. Another aspect is that at some point after they built the original labs, they built some apartments, which it makes it even more useful because you can have visiting professors and provide them housing for a period, which is a real nice benefit if you're going to come down and do some work. So not only do they have the lab, but additional housing and some parking, which makes it such a jewel, and we want to keep it polished. So once again, the Kerckhoff Marine Laboratory. It's a cool building if you go inside, and there's even room up on the deck perhaps for a little area where you could have social events for visiting professors or whatever. So let's hope that this isn't a requiem, but a new beginning for the laboratory. Well, that's our show, and until next time, let's all work on making our village green.